They say the biggest breakthroughs in medicine come from the most unexpected places. In my case, it came from a research lab that my father-in-law was determined to shut down. My name is Dr. Sarah Collins, and until yesterday, I was just the dreamer running an underfunded research program at Hamilton Memorial Hospital. Today, I'm the scientist who developed a treatment that could save millions of lives if my father-in-law doesn't kill it first. This is ridiculous, Dr. Richard Hamilton declared, tossing my quarterly report across the boardroom table. 3 years and $2 million spent on theoretical research with no practical applications. The board can't justify this expense anymore. I kept my voice steady, despite the fact that my hands were shaking under the table. The neural regeneration protocol shows promising results. In mice, he interrupted. Meanwhile, we have real patients needing real treatments. This isn't some academic playground, Sarah. This is a hospital with budget constraints. The other board members nodded along. They always did. Richard Hamilton wasn't just chief of medicine, he was hospital royalty. His father had founded Hamilton Memorial, his family name was on every wing, and his word was practically law. He was also the man who had never forgiven his son Mark for marrying a research scientist instead of a proper surgeon like himself. The FDA review, I started, is a waste of time, Richard cut in. Just like this entire program has been. I moved to terminate the neural regeneration research effective immediately. I second the motion, Dr. Peterson chimed in quickly, always the first to agree with Richard. I looked around the table at the faces I'd known for 3 years. Dr. Chen, who had initially supported my research. Dr. Whitman, who had called my early results fascinating. All of them avoiding my eyes now. All in favor? Richard asked. Hands went up around the table. This was it. 3 years of work, countless late nights, breakthrough after breakthrough that nobody would believe in. All about to be destroyed by a man who hadn't set foot in a research lab in 20 years. But Richard didn't know about the email I'd received last night. Before you vote, I said calmly, you might want to check tomorrow's FDA announcements. Richard paused, his hand halfway up. What are you talking about? The phase IO trial results. They came in last night. I pulled out my tablet. Would you like to see them now or wait for the public announcement? There's no way the FDA has reviewed. Fast-track approval, I interrupted, given the unprecedented success rates in human trials. The ones you said were a waste of time. The room went silent. Dr. Chen slowly lowered his hand. You're bluffing, Richard said, but there was a note of uncertainty in his voice. I connected my tablet to the room's display screen. The neural regeneration protocol showed a 94% success rate in restoring function to damaged spinal cord tissue, complete reversal of paralysis in 82% of test subjects. The FDA panel called it, and I quote, the most significant breakthrough in neurological treatment this decade. The data scrolled across the screen. Charts, test results, before and after scans showing damaged nerve tissue regenerating under my treatment protocol. That's impossible, Dr. Peterson whispered. No, I said quietly. It's just science you didn't believe in. I turned to my father-in-law, whose face had gone from confident to ashen. The pharmaceutical companies are already calling. Licensing offers starting at $300 million. But since you're about to vote to terminate the research, I started packing up my papers. I'm sure Mass General or Mayo Clinic would be happy to take over the program. Now wait just a minute, Richard sputtered. This is Hamilton Memorial intellectual property. Actually, I pulled out one more document. I filed the patents personally. The hospital only owned the research rights as long as the program continued. Terminate it, and the rights revert to me as the primary inventor. Legal documents appeared on the screen, papers I had drawn up months ago when I first realized Richard would never support my work simply because it was mine. You planned this, he accused. No, I corrected him. I protected my work, because you taught me that's what I had to do. The boardroom erupted into chaos. Dr. Chen was frantically reading the trial results. Dr. Whitman was already on the phone with someone. Dr. Peterson looked like he might faint. And Richard just stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Why didn't you tell us the trials were this successful? He finally asked. I tried. For 3 years, I tried. But you were too busy telling me what I couldn't do to listen to what I was actually doing. The door opened and Mark burst in. My husband looked like he'd run all the way from his neurology department, Sarah, is it true? The FDA approval? I nodded. He swept me up in a hug, not caring about the stunned board members. I knew you could do it, he whispered, even when they didn't believe. Dr. Collins, Dr. Chin interrupted cautiously. Perhaps we should discuss the future of the program. With appropriate funding increases, of course. I looked at my father-in-law, still sitting in his chairman's seat, still trying to process how his wasteful research program had turned into the biggest medical breakthrough in decades. I said slowly, we need to discuss more than just funding. We need to talk about how Hamilton Memorial approaches innovation, about who gets heard in these boardroom meetings, about what we might be missing because we're too busy looking down on ideas that don't come from the usual sources. Richard opened his mouth, probably to object, but for once, someone else spoke first. Dr. Collins is right, Dr. Whitman said firmly. We've been too conservative, too dismissive. If we want to remain a leading institution, we need to change. One by one, the other board members nodded. Even Dr. Peterson managed a weak agreement. I sat back down, Mark's hand firmly in mine. Now about those budget constraints. The next few hours would reshape not just my research program, but the entire culture of Hamilton Memorial. And my father-in-law was about to learn that sometimes the most important medical breakthroughs come from the very people you're trying to silence. The morning after the board meeting, I arrived at Hamilton Memorial to find news vans lined up outside. Revolutionary spinal treatment approved by FDA flashed across every screen in the hospital lobby. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the official announcement. Dr. Collins, nurses, doctors, and even patients called out congratulations as I made my way to my lab. Many of them had watched me fight for funding and recognition for years. Now they were seeing the vindication they'd hoped for. My research team was already hard at work, excited but focused. They believed in this project even when the board didn't, working late nights and weekends because they knew we were onto something revolutionary. The pharmaceutical companies are in conference room 3, my assistant Jenny reported. All of them. And Dr. Hamilton is waiting in your office. I paused. Which Dr. Hamilton? Both of them. Richard and Mark were standing at opposite ends of my small office, the tension between them palpable. The wall-mounted TV was showing CNBC's coverage of our FDA approval, with stock prices of major pharmaceutical companies scrolling beneath. Sarah, Richard spoke first, his voice lacking its usual authority. We need to talk about the future of the program. Now you want to talk? I set down my files. After trying to shut us down yesterday, I was wrong. The words seemed to physically pain him. I let personal prejudices cloud my judgment. Mark moved to stand beside me. You let your disappointment in me cloud your judgment of her. Richard flinched. Perhaps. I logged into my computer, pulling up the latest data. The licensing offers have doubled since last night. Mayo Clinic called personally to discuss the partnership, and the Department of Defense wants to talk about applications for combat injuries. All of which should stay at Hamilton Memorial, Richard said quickly. Why? I turned to face him. Because now it's profitable. Because now you can put the Hamilton name on a breakthrough. Because I was wrong, he repeated, louder this time. And because you were right, we need to change how this hospital approaches innovation. I studied him carefully. Go on. I'm stepping down as chief of medicine, he announced. The board agreed this morning. We need younger leadership, someone who understands where medicine is heading. Mark and I exchanged shocked looks. They're offering you the position, he continued, looking at me. Me? But I'm not even a department head. You just developed the biggest breakthrough in neurological medicine in decades. You did it despite resistance, despite underfunding, despite... He swallowed, despite me actively working against you. That's exactly the kind of leadership we need. Before I could respond, Jenny burst in. Dr. Collins, the first patient from the trial is here for a press conference, and she's walking. Maria Rodriguez had been paralyzed from the waist down in a car accident 2 years ago. She'd been one of our first trial patients, and her recovery had been nothing short of miraculous. Now she stood in the hospital's main conference room, walking smoothly to the podium while cameras flashed. 6 months ago, I couldn't feel my legs, she told the packed room. Today, I'm planning to run a 5K. Dr. Collins didn't just give me back my ability to walk, she gave me back my life. More patients followed, each with their own story of recovery. A teenage athlete who'd been told he'd never play again. A grandmother who could now pick up her grandchildren. A veteran who had regained function after a combat injury. Richard watched it all from the back of the room, his expression unreadable. Later that evening, as the media circus finally wound down, he found me in my lab. "Your mother-in-law called," he said without preamble. "She reminded me of something I've forgotten." I looked up from my microscope. "What's that?" "The day Mark told us he was marrying you, you showed us your research proposal. The early theory behind neural regeneration. Margaret said we should support you, that she could see your passion. I dismissed it as a naive dream. I remember. She also said I was making the same mistake my father made with me, dismissing new ideas because they didn't fit our preconceptions." He picked up a framed photo from my desk, my whole team celebrating our first successful trial. "I didn't listen then. I'm listening now." I set down my notes. "What are you suggesting?" "A new research division, not just for neural regeneration, but for all the impossible ideas we've been ignoring. Full funding, complete autonomy, direct board access. You'd oversee it as chief of medicine. And you'd be okay with your daughter-in-law being your boss?" He actually smiled. "I think I've proven I'm not the best judge of what this hospital needs. Besides," he hesitated, "I'd like to get back into research myself, if you'd have me on your team." 6 months later, I stood in the newly opened Collins Research Wing. I'd insisted on dropping the Hamilton name. The hospital needed to show it was truly changing. Our neural regeneration protocol was being implemented in hospitals worldwide. The licensing revenues had transformed Hamilton Memorial's budget from stretched to substantial. But more importantly, the culture had changed. Young researchers now had paths to develop their ideas. The board had been restructured to include more diverse voices. Even Richard had found his passion again, working with a team developing new applications for our breakthrough. Mark thrived in his role heading the neurology department, proudly supporting my work while building his own legacy. We proved that a marriage between two doctors could be a partnership of equals. Margaret, my mother-in-law, just smiled knowingly at family dinners. "I told them so," she'd say, watching Richard enthusiastically discuss research with the younger scientists. The success stories kept coming. A quadriplegic patient taking his first steps. A child with severe nerve damage regaining function. Each one reinforcing what I'd known all along, that sometimes the most important medical advances come from believing in the impossible. Last week, a young researcher came to my office with a radical new theory about regenerating brain tissue. The old Hamilton Memorial would have dismissed her immediately. Instead, I listened, because sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from the quietest voices. Richard drops by my lab sometimes, usually late in the evening when most people have gone home. He doesn't say much, just watches the teams work, sees the passion that drives them. I think he's finally understanding what he almost destroyed. The neural regeneration protocol continues to evolve, helping more patients every day. But its greatest impact might not be on medicine at all. It might be in showing that innovation can't be controlled by hierarchy or tradition. Sometimes the most important discovery isn't the cure you create, but the change you inspire. And sometimes the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong, it's showing them a better way to be right. The Hamilton Memorial of today is unrecognizable from 2 years ago. Young researchers flood our halls with new ideas. The board meetings are filled with passionate debate instead of quiet acquiescence. And somewhere in a small lab, another impossible breakthrough is probably taking shape. All because someone refused to be silenced. All because sometimes the most powerful response to doubt isn't anger or argument. It's simply succeeding.